Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Foreclosurepedia Podcast. Foreclosurepedia Podcast premieres each Sunday evening at 2300 hours. It's a presentation of the Foreclosurepedia Radio Network. I wanted to actually get out a real quick podcast on the new trend of all the nationals actually wanting to begin to harvest, because there's no other word for it, harvest your Social Security number, your driver's license number, and actually both of those of all your subcontractors. Now, this is not just the nationals whom are going to do this. This is the regionals, and this is the very small order mills. As everybody remembers on here, I brought up and broke the story about PPMS. These were the felons, and the industry knew they were felons. Why? Because the chief financial officer, Brandon Lambert, was a wanted felon who had crossed a state line into Georgia to actually participate in an illegal and ongoing enterprise. Everybody knew that, had they actually taken the time to research the information, because he was listed by the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia with his real name. So herein lies the crux and what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about most, Safeguard as a company probably does have some mechanisms in there to protect your data. Will they? I don't know. I presume they will, but I don't work for them, so I can't comment, and I think everybody out there knows that they'll never speak to me. As for the rest of them, I'm terrified at best. And how this is going to work is a bank will issue an order out, and maybe it'll go to Safeguard or whomever, and then Safeguard is responsible for distributing that out through its network of order mills, and then those order mills distribute to other order mills, and then it finally gets down to the contractor. Now, all those order mills, and the vast majority of them actually have no secure socket layer protocols on their servers. What they're doing is they're taking your Social Security numbers, and hopefully they're not wanted felons like the industry, like every single buddy knew PPMS was. Hopefully they're not, but here's the problem. These are ma and pa outfits that now have your Social Security number. And the biggest problem that's going to arise in this is the simple fact that this isn't just during your tenure within the property preservation industry. This is the rest of your life. Your Social Security number and those of the subcontractors who work for you now is on somebody's laptop. God forbid the window just got broken in and it was stolen, or God forbid the guy's involved in some type of crazy artifice or scheme with pornography or money laundering, or perhaps he wants to kill his wife. Let's not bullshit around here at all. All these other order mills have no need whatsoever for your Social Security number. And truth be known, Robert Klein and the rest of his ilk have absolutely no need whatsoever for a Social Security number unless you are an employee. Now, I want to be very specific of what I'm saying here. There's a very clear and distinct differentiation between an employee and an independent contractor. Now, our good buddy Uncle Joe Biden, is already spinning up commissions and task force, buying through the United States Department of Labor, through the Wage and Hour Division, to closely examine this. There is a reason, folks. There's a reason, ladies and gentlemen, why companies have a TIN. There's a very specific reason for that. Because you're a company. Now, you're either a company, you're either an independent contractor, or you're an employee. Most people are going to be terrified to go to the IRS and force an SS8 examination on these companies. I'm not. I could give two shits. I could give a rat's ass, because I am finally at my wit's end with these people. This is all of the nationals, all of the regionals, anybody who issues a work order, in my opinion now, are part and parcel participating in the illegal gathering of information by and through the Social Security number. But let me tell you, it's not just me. Let's actually go over here to the Federal Trade Commission and let's actually hear what they have to say about the sharing of this information, shall we? I want to make sure everybody can see this, all right? This isn't something I made up and just clipped.
Hi, I'm Manisha Mitchell, attorney at the Federal Trade Commission. For most companies, using customer and employee information is an everyday part of doing business. On a typical day, you might use credit card numbers, medical information, social security numbers, and other personal data that you have in your files. If this information gets into the wrong hands, it could lead to fraud and identity theft. That's why any company that has this type of sensitive information in their files or on their computer systems wants to consider the implications and risks of using peer-to-peer file sharing software.
Now I want to stop right there. Anybody. She didn't say just Robert Klein. She didn't just say the nationals. Anybody. That is anybody. Now what I want you to picture is you're a ma and pa company out there. And you, because in your infinite wisdom and sheer terror, agreed to accede and to bow down and lick the boots of these nationals and started streaming Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, dates of birth, addresses, insurance numbers, everything off to one of these order mills. And what I want you also to picture, because let's obviously not bullshit around, PPMS is just one firm. The industry does not want any statistics on this. They do not want anybody to know about this information. Make absolutely no mistake, you're liable. God forbid that one of your subcontractors, for whatever reason, ends up having his or her identity stolen. You're on the hook, buddy, because you're going to be named part and parcel along with everybody else on this planet. And let me point out something else. Because of the fact that we're in a down economy, the biggest trend there is right now in litigation, the biggest trend, listen to those words, the biggest trend right now in employment litigation is suing the employer. It's not bullshit around here, folks. You're going to be named. Klein and the rest of them have hundreds of millions of dollars and insanely large and inordinate law firms that are going to defend them. Where are you going to be?
Peer-to-peer file sharing is a way for people to share software and documents with other computer users. Many people think about it in terms of sharing music, videos, or photos. File sharing programs let you connect your computer to a network. And once connected, you can view and download files that other people have shared. The fact is that millions of people can be connected to a file sharing network at the same time, giving each of them access to lots of information, and exposing them to certain risks. Some users might mistakenly give others access to drives or folders with sensitive information. If this happens on your network, you could inadvertently share information like tax returns, medical records, or company documents. Viruses or other malware programs also can be a threat. They could change the drives or folders you've designated for sharing, making your private files public. Once another user downloads your files, you can't get them back or delete them, even if you didn't mean to share them. And if file sharing software has security flaws, it could open the door to attacks on other computers on the network.
Now I want to jump in here for a minute too, because Klein along with AMS REO, Midwest Metro, pretty much everybody has been spinning up these new little cell phone apps. We want to embed our stuff, mandatory mind you. This isn't an option, this is mandatory. Midwest Metro, by and large, their little app was one of those, let's get cozy with the contractors and hopefully allow them to have a choice. Safeguards is no choice. This shit's rolling downhill. Now, they will not release the source code. AMS REO will not release the source code. None of these people will release the source code. If a computer programmer such as myself cannot look at that source code, if that source code is not open source, then let me tell you what, it's flawed from the beginning, because you only have a very small amount of eyes that are looking on that source code. Who knows exactly what it does? Let me tell you. Let me tell you the worst case scenario. Let me tell you what you don't want to happen, and it's going to happen. You mark my words as I'm talking to you today on the 1st of April at, excuse me, 17:06 hours Eastern Standard Time. And this is no April Fool's broadcast. Let me tell you, the pictures of your children are going to be all over Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Russia. That's where they're going to be. Make absolutely no mistake, because those sick people out there are going to sell them. Now, that's just the beginning of your nightmare. That's just the beginning, because now your financial information is out there. And good old Jose, or perhaps Vladimir, whomever it might be, now has your identity. That's right. That's right. God forbid one of the terrorists, one of those people whom are coming over our borders in droves, we're being invaded by mongrel hordes, gets a hold of your financial information. It's happening every day. As I'm talking to you right now, in the next 30 seconds, and upwards of 3,000 people are going to have their identities stolen somewhere on this planet. Make no mistake about that, folks. It's going to happen, because there are no safety protocols in place. It begins and ends with the nationals, because they demand it. The United States government is not demanding it. The Mortgage Bankers Association is not demanding it. The financial institutions are not demanding it. This is part and parcel the nationals' demands.
If you're deciding whether to ban or allow access to file sharing programs on your network, consider your business needs. Think about how much sensitive information is on your network and where it's saved. Consider which computers have access to this information and how you protect it. If you need to keep sensitive information on your network to conduct business, weigh the benefits of file sharing against the risks, and put a policy into place about the use of file sharing programs in your organization. Once your policy is in place, enforce it.
And let me ask you just a little bit, and this goes directly out to Mr. Robert Klein. Mr. Klein, am I allowed to see your actual policies and procedures that are in place? And because you're ordering all the regionals and all the other order mills otherwise unspecified, are you going to allow me to see their policies and procedures? Am I going to be allowed the transparency to see the auditing of the network? It's not bullshit around here. Anybody can throw a couple of 25-cent words on a piece of paper and call it a white paper or position paper. Let's talk about the actual statistics on this. No, folks, this does not set well with me. This actually makes me think part and parcel of Nazi Germany. Why? Because the contractors are now being identified as a class or a segment of society whom information can be demanded from willy-nilly with no protections whatsoever. And a final question on this point, let me ask everybody out there, including Mr. Klein. Am I covered under your insurance policy? If my information seeps out, does your insurance company pay me? Does it pay to get my name back? Does it pay to rebuild my company or that of my subcontractors? If I lose my house, God forbid, you going to buy my house back? Are you insuring those whom you're issuing these marching orders to? It's a good question. I think it's a question everybody ought to be asking.
The risk of someone sharing sensitive information unintentionally. Whether you use file sharing programs or not, you can secure the sensitive information on your network. Here's how. First, delete any sensitive information you don't need. Second, restrict the folders or drives on your network where files with sensitive information can be shared.
Yeah, I really like this one. You know, let's go ahead and delete. You know what? Most people don't understand what it means to delete. When you delete a file on a computer, you're not deleting anything. That's why people like me can come in years later when I find a computer at the dump and pull all your information. Make no mistake about that. You're going to move around the file allocation tables just a little bit. You don't ever delete. If you don't believe me, why don't you go to a government auction and ask to buy some used military computers? Yeah, you're not going to do that. If you don't believe me, why don't you go to a closed medical center who's having an auction and ask to buy some of their PCs? Yeah, HIPAA doesn't allow that. You know why? Because you cannot delete information. Now, there's mil-spec under ISO that deals with that. But let me tell you, Mr. John Doe and Mrs. Jane Doe got, hoping. This is hope upon hope that they're not felons, that they're not associated with Jason Mathis and Brandon Lambert and the rest of the nationals who knew precisely what they were doing and precisely when, where, how, and why, and allowed that to occur with overt intention. No, those people don't know what mil-spec definition is. They don't know what it means to delete. While they're on there on a regular Windows system, let's not even talk about DRM or the applications thereof. They're surfing their little Facebook or their little LinkedIn or their little Picasa, and your information's sitting there. Your information is sitting there, and a hacker from some group like Anonymous or somewhere else is in there watching it go through that tunnel. Why? Because that tunnel is unencrypted. It is unencrypted, folks. Strangely enough, even as I'm looking at the FTC website, it's unencrypted.
Third, minimize or eliminate the use of file sharing programs on any computers that store sensitive information. Fourth, scan your network to detect file sharing programs that your organization hasn't approved and take steps to remove them. And finally, train your employees and anyone else who has access to your network about the security risks inherent in using file sharing programs. To learn more about file sharing programs, visit the Business Center at business.ftc.gov.
Let me tell you how this is going down the pike, folks. Let me tell you precisely how this is going down the pike. Your information is going to be everywhere. Everybody's going to know it. There is no way to protect your financial information. But what you can do is be proactive and ask for the law, the rule, or the regulation that stipulates under law that you must reveal a Social Security number. Because the minute we start allowing these companies to demand this kind of information, they have one of two options. They can make us an employee. Now, this podcast isn't going to concern itself with the facts that contractors on each and every day are being exposed to mold, to methamphetamine, to tuberculosis, to Legionnaire's disease, to Spanish influenza. Hey, I'm not going to bullshit nobody. Make me an employee any day of the week. You want my Social Security number? Let's go down that road, baby, because I tell you what, Uncle Joe, hey, I like his attitude about what to do when the door is shut and you don't know who's on the other side. And I think Uncle Joe and I think the rest of the Democrats are pretty serious about the fact that they need some money up in Washington, D.C. And let's really not bullshit around here. The sequester was a joke. Took a couple of bucks here and there. Didn't really do anything. Make no mistake, and I want everybody to listen to my voice very carefully on this. Make no mistake whatsoever. If there's a good IRS audit, if the IRS becomes, and they're going to become involved, make no mistake about that whatsoever. They are, and I welcome their auditing of this sickening industry. When they become involved, they're going to look back over the past 20 to 25 years and the hundreds of thousands of contractors who really were employees. Now listen to that word just for a minute, employees. I want you to do the simple calculations off the top of your head. about the amount of dollars that have been lost by both state and the United States government. State governments and the U.S. governments. The hundreds of billions of dollars that were never tapped into. Asking for the Social Security number trespasses upon the covenant between the independent contractor relationship with the national, the regional, or the otherwise unspecified order mill. End of conversation. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to another edition of Foreclosurepedia podcast. I apologize for the tone of my voice this evening, but ladies and gentlemen, this is a very serious matter. It's a very serious matter. We're being asked now to give all of our information about our lives and put it part and parcel into the hands of people whom are here for a week and gone. Safeguard's a little different because they're a national firm. They're probably going to be around forever. With that said, and I'll say this publicly, Safeguard is a necessary evil. I have nothing personal, against Mr. Klein. I have nothing personal against Amir. You know, this is business. It's not personal at the end of the day. You know, but Safeguard, and the reason I identify with Safeguard is because on the pre-conveyance aspect, Safeguard is part and parcel of the industry. And they should have had a little more foresight. They should have consulted with counsel. And God forbid if they did, they should fire those lawyers, because I've probably forgotten more law than they will ever learn. They really should have stood to the plate and said, hey, you know, instead of targeting the contractors and risking their lives here, because that's what's going on, you destroy somebody's credit and they're going to be smoking crack and living down at the mission. Don't bullshit nobody. You know, this is lose-lose all the way around. They should have stood to the plate and said, you know what we need to do is we need to look at the order mills. We need to look at these people because they were identified as felons. We need to ask questions like, why were they hired down in Georgia and refused to pay people? We ought to look at the legislative process within HUD and ask the question, why did not HUD step in and go to the prime vendors and say, hey, the felons you hired didn't pay anybody? That's what should have happened, but what happened was a knee-jerk reaction to the publications that I made on Foreclosurepedia. It is true, pure, and unadulterated madness. I welcome legislation. I think the United States government needs to kick in the doors and completely destroy the industry, and that's what they're going to do. Let's look at Dodd-Frank, the other knee-jerk reaction. 24 million man-hours of paperwork, and only the first third of those laws have come down the pike. Now, I want you to picture what's going to happen to this industry. And the people you have to thank are the nationals that you work for.